there, I'm Johanna Grisay. Welcome to another episode of Johanna's Artbeat. I'm your host, Johanna Grisay. My last episode was with Nicola Rose, my friend who did the wonderful film Goodbye Petrushka, which is out on pretty much all streaming platforms. Check it out if you haven't yet. Great episode with her where I talked to her while she was in France, which was pretty cool. Closest I've gotten to France so far. This episode is going to be with my friend Ben Young III, who has this wonderful show called Wild New York, where he and his friend Katie explore New York's wildlife. It's so cool. I really like the show. And this is actually going to be the last episode of the season. I'm going to be taking the show on a little bit of a hiatus, but I really appreciate everybody who's listened and watched so far. So let's get into it. Thanks for tuning in. Let me give you a little bit of a rundown on the show. So Ben is a web series that started in 2020. I'm going to be talking briefly about the show thus far overall. Ben does the show with Katie Luke. The duo really bounce well off each other, with each person taking turns on being the main face of the show in each episode. Each episode is about 5 to 15 minutes at most, which is a great amount of time for an educational video, especially considering the popularity of short videos, such as stories on Instagram and other apps. I believe only one camera was used, and the video and sound quality are really impressive. Ben often talks direct to camera and has a friendly, welcoming aura on screen. And of course, an edge of cool with his often worn hats. The facts about the animals are clear and simple and easy to understand. Each episode, Ben and Katie talk about the animals they're focusing on, or the animal rather they're focusing on, and then they try to get live footage of the creature they're talking about. The first episode focused on squirrels. If you live in New York City, you've seen many of these little guys. So I found it to be an ideal start. Although I knew New York City had a few kinds of squirrels, the regular gray one and the black fancy ones, as I call them, apparently there are over 600 kinds. And we even sometimes have flying squirrels here in New York City. I had no idea. They also give a little background into New York City's wildlife. One of my favorite things about living here are the green spaces. During the lockdown part of COVID, walking a great deal in them and out in nature in general was a lifesaver for me, and I'm sure many others who lived alone. And New York City has over 1,500 green spaces. I also really enjoyed the episode on whale watching. That was another standout, which I always saw as kind of a Boston thing. The show explains the indigenous roots of Manhattan and the Lenape people. Several episodes focus on different types of birds, including owls and hawks. The show even touches on raccoons and skunks. The show is really entertaining and informative. It also uses found footage from YouTube to supplement. There are some videos that are just visual with music in the background, such as the one on the High Line when it's raining. Those are lovely, but I prefer the episodes with more of spoken facts. Katie and Ben and their positivity also really help make the show. Their enthusiasm draws you in, but it's not to like that syrupy point that hosts of kids shows sometimes use. It's still very natural. The views of the city are beautiful, including the bridges. The series doesn't hide, though, from the reality of the wild, including animal waste and animals feeding. I would really highly recommend checking out this show. Ben, welcome to Johanna's Artbeat. How are you?
I'm doing good, Joanna. Good to be here.
I'm so glad that we were able to fit you in with your busy schedule because you're quite popular. I know. You are.
Not so much right now, but yeah, sure.
You are pretty popular. And excuse me to anyone listening, you're hearing my cat. I know some of you love this, some of you don't probably, but hopefully he'll settle down in a minute because we all know he likes to be the center of attention. So when I start out these podcast episodes, I like to talk to my guests about how we first met. I think we actually met on the set of doing background work for She Said, which is out now, I think.
Yes. I don't know if it's not out now. It's just going to be out sometime this month.
It's definitely out. Yeah. I mean, I went to the premiere, which was pretty cool. I can see I didn't look for you, I'm sorry, but I could see myself in the very beginning
there is no shot. There is no shot you're going to be able to see me. I was, if that scene even made it, I was trying very actively to be out of frame.
Were you one of the revolutionary people?
Yeah. I was.
Okay.
I was a right coat.
I don't think they even barely showed them. Maybe a little bit with the boat. So I'd have to watch again.
The only thing that I cared about was we got hazard pay because we had to get in the water.
That's good. It was kind of a cool setting though. It was kind of out in the woods or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was fun. Anyway, so before we get to your Wild New York show, which we're going to talk about, let's talk about your career as a whole because you've done a lot.
You have a BFA from Auburn University and you graduated magna cum laude in musical theater. So tell me a little bit about that experience and choosing that school.
The short version is I wasn't going to go there and study theater. Auburn has a fantastic veterinary school, which was what I
Okay,
was planning to pursue. I was going to get an undergraduate BS in
that makes
animal
sense.
sciences. And then I had this crazy idea because I'd started doing some acting towards the last couple of years of high school that I should just try and see if I can do it in college. Because you know what, if I can't do it in Auburn, Alabama, I probably can't do it professionally. So I can just go ahead and put a check mark next to that dream and it's done. So they had auditions the day before classes started for the musical theater BFA track.
Oh, nice.
At 11:50 that night, I got the notification that said, you know, if you accept, we need to know in the next 10 minutes because we have to overhaul your entire class
10
schedule.
minutes. Wow. Okay.
Yes. So I said
Wow.
yes. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. I spent 4 years, only two of which are BFA studio at Auburn. The first two are kind of like a gen ed basic theater courses, studying technical theater, costume construction, stage
Oh,
makeup, a
wow.
little bit of voice, a little bit of acting, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a 2 year program that is the intense acting studio for both the BFA musical theater and just the BFA traditional acting courses.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it was a good time. I enjoyed a lot about being at a non-conservatory school. It was a true liberal
That's
arts
true.
university. So I got the chance to watch football games
Less
and
pressure probably too as well. Maybe.
yes, I mean,
No.
it depends. I was definitely a big fish in a small pond, but at the
Okay,
same
that's cool.
time, yeah, no, again, it was great. I got to learn a lot about what I didn't know, which I think a lot of studio programs, you don't typically get that luxury. You are up against a lot of people that have been doing it their whole lives, know this
Hmm.
is exactly who they want to be. I remember my first intro to theater class, people were asking questions about like, you know, when should we join Actors Equity and you know what do you think about the latest LORT contract negotiations? And I'd never heard those words before in my life. So I spent a good bit of time there in over my head, but
Well,
you know, it was a college environment, so I had a lot of fun. I
that's
learned a
good.
ton. I don't know that I necessarily came out of it ready to be a working professional actor, but all the tools were there for sure.
That's really, I mean, I'm sure you learned plenty enough and you had fun. That's good. You also have a teaching certification in Fitzmaurice voice work. Tell me more about that and what made you want to get into voice work. Obviously, we can see you have a fancy mic, so you've got part of it.
Yeah, no, the fancy mic is for a lot of things. I also
Okay.
I appear fairly regularly on a basketball podcast.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and I do a little bit of voiceover work. So it the nice part about the fancy mic is it means I can set up just about anywhere, and I don't need a really fancy studio space to get pretty good quality audio.
That's cool.
Um, I don't know how well it's going to turn out in this since I'm
I'm
not
sure it'll be
editing.
fine. It'll be great.
And yeah. Hopefully it's not too much for you to do in post. But what were we talking about?
Why you
Fitzmaurice voice work. That's right. Yeah.
Fitzmaurice.
So
Yes.
I had two professors who were both certified teachers in Fitzmaurice voice work, and Catherine Fitzmaurice actually came down
Oh,
and
wow.
taught a weekend workshop at our school. And apparently, she was very impressed with my questions and my attitude towards the whole thing, and she offered me this opportunity to intern with her over the summers in New York City, and also finish her teaching certification at the same time. So I did a lot of work in like printing off copies of the worksheets and the diagrams that we use to teach people about the physiology of the human voice and human anatomy and all of the different Shakespeare monologues that we would work through talking about intonation and
Cool.
dialect and all those sorts of things. So it was a very exciting experience. It was also one that I don't know. I got more out of it being somebody that was being in New York for 3.5 weeks in
Oh,
the
okay.
summers than I did necessarily as a teacher. I was the only person there that did not already have my BFA.
Oh, wow.
And I was the first person to get certified that was not actively pursuing a master's degree. So, although I am certified to teach as an assistant teacher, I've never really used that personally.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really a program geared more towards people I think who are either going to be in a university setting or someone who's prepared to teach a lot privately.
Yeah,
Um, Now that we're sort of coming out of COVID, I might be exploring some of those options. I've been developing my skills as a teacher more and more.
that's
But
cool.
overall, the main thing that was exciting for me was it was a chance to come and be and live and work in New York for a little
Oh, yeah.
while I was still in school. So when I first moved to New York in the fall of 2012, you know, I already knew the subway system pretty well.
That's
I know how
good.
to get to Ripley and Pearl, which
Yeah,
makes a
that's the
big
important
difference.
two, the important places.
Yeah.
Cool. And you also have improv experience with the Actors Project NYC. What is this? Tell me about this school and what
So the
that.
Actors Project NYC is a membership theater company in New York City that specializes in agency showcases. So what they help do is get young actors in front of agents, in front of managers, occasionally in front of casting directors, with some material that is designed to showcase the best aspects of their personality in a fun, entertaining way, and just get you more familiar with networking opportunities. Essentially, they put on showcases that are collections of monologues and then occasionally collections of scenes, sketches, and improv that allow you to perform in front of talent agents and managers that are actively seeking new talent and get feedback. They'll
Cool.
give you feedback not just about your performance, but they also give you feedback about your pitch packages. They'll look at your headshots and resume.
Cool.
Sometimes they'll even check out your website and say, hey, you know, I would love to see more of X.
That's really that's actually really helpful, because I mean I've done some of the, like, you know, pay for play or whatever you call it, like what's the name of one of those, Actors
Like
Connection.
Actors Connection.
Yeah, but this sounds a little more detailed. So
Well, it's a little bit more performance oriented. A lot of times those courses don't necessarily help you. Well, I don't want to badmouth anybody on the podcast.
No,
I will
no,
say
you're
that
not.
my experience with the Actors Project was it was so useful because you were part of a theater company. You got to watch a whole lot of young actors work, and you usually got a sense afterwards of who is getting called in, who is not getting called in, what types of characters were people looking for, that sort of thing. So it was overall a very beneficial experience. I know that a lot of people are very reluctant to get involved in those type of companies. But if it's something that you feel going into it, you can be your own teacher and be your own brand manager, it will help show you a lot of things that you may not have seen before and help you continue to modify yourself, not just as a performer, but as a professional.
Cool. Are they still around? Do you know? I feel like I've heard of them.
Yeah. The Actors Project, like many of these companies, they kind of suffered a little bit through COVID because one of their main things is get a whole bunch of people in a room and share space together for an hour and a half. And we spent about 2 years where that was not such a great idea.
Yeah.
So
Slowly
they
coming
did
back
some,
to in person. Yeah.
yeah. They did some virtual showcases, but I haven't really checked in with them in a little while. I have some really fantastic agents that are working for me right now that I
Nice.
really enjoy, but there may come a time where I'm interested in going back and performing with them again, and I'll be sure to let you know.
Yeah, no, I really probably need to look more into that. That's cool. I've definitely, I know other people have done that. And as for film and TV, you've done a lot, and it's New York City. So if you can hear the siren on here, let's wait a second maybe for that pat to pass. There it goes. You've done quite a bit of film and TV. And your first one was Wall of Fortune. What was the casting process like for this experience? And was that your first on camera speaking role? Excuse me.
No, that was not my first. My first was, well, I'm sure we'll talk about Screen Crashers at some point, which is a fun saga to go through. But Wall of Fortune was someone's Kickstarter program, and they were looking for talent to create a pitch video for it. And I believe that was posted through casting networks is where I saw that breakdown. And it was right around
to it.
Yeah, and it was right around the time that I'd started growing my hair out.
Okay.
Which gave me a unique look.
Can't see it here, but Ben has very nice, like, longer hair.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I made that decision in 2014. I had been through some callbacks and some various things for like different Broadway shows, but nothing was really hitting. And I had this idea that if I changed my look, I might become more marketable. And about the time my hair hit my shoulders, I started working, and I haven't really stopped. So that's become a huge part of my personal brand. It has pigeonholed me a little bit. I'm sure as we get into more of my TV credits, we'll talk about that. But Wall of Fortune was one of those ones where I had long, scraggly hair. You know, if I didn't wash it for a few days, it looked pretty greasy and gross, and I could look fairly run down. And Wall of Fortune was a little commercial for instead of getting a fortune cookie at the end of your meal, it was a scratch-off board. And you would just scratch off a new fortune every day, and that
the Wall
caused
of Fortune.
and it caused this guy who walked past this young, struggling, homeless kid every day to help him reconnect with his mother. So it was a very touching silent video, but it was definitely one of those where, like, I know the only reason that I booked it was I had long hair.
I'm pretty sure I've gotten gigs because of my hair color or my look. We've all gotten gigs for certain looks. It's just
Oh yeah.
what you do with it. That's all that matters, you know. And you mentioned just now Screen Crashers. I do want to know more about that because you're a series regular on that. And you said there's some story behind there. So go right ahead. I'd like to hear about
Oh
it.
yeah. So Screen Crashers was my first time ever doing anything on camera.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a group of friends of mine that we all worked at a restaurant together, and there was this show. It used to be called That Dude with the Glasses.com, and it was a fairly
Okay.
popular YouTube show. And he expanded to this website called Channel Awesome that was looking
Hmm.
for more content. And my friends had this idea for a D&D type game where you essentially had a group of Dungeons and Dragons players, but instead of doing a real game. They were essentially acting out the plots of various famous television shows and movies, and in a way commenting on them from a nerd perspective about things that maybe didn't make sense or things that we look back on now and think, oh, that was weird or a little bit Deus Ex Machina. So we filmed a pilot for it, and gosh, it's now been like 8 years, and I can't remember what our pilot episode was. I think it was Star Wars, but if I remember correctly, Star Wars would have been the second episode. But we got picked up by Channel Awesome,
Hmm.
and they were requesting new episodes at least once a month. And
Hmm.
there was a point for a little while where we were doing episodes probably once every couple of weeks, which is really cool. We had a rotating cast, but I was one of the core characters who came back
Nice.
again and again. And the fun sort of quirk of my character was I always died in whatever Dungeons and Dragons game we were playing. So I was the character that got killed off every single time.
Nice.
Um, no, the pilot, if I'm remembering now, was the first episode of, or the first season of Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and so my character was Ned Stark, who got killed at the end. And
Oh,
then I would be Wash in the Firefly movie. I think I was Ned Stark's kid in another version of Game of Thrones that we did. Just every time there was an episode where a character was going to get killed off, that was me.
that's fair.
Um, and that was the first time I was actually able to put an acting reel together.
Nice.
We had a
Your
borrowed
first
camera.
one. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
we had a borrowed camera. It was someone's really nice DSLR. We had some softbox lights, and we had a few different microphones that we would use to capture audio. And this guy Justin Harris, he did the vast majority of the writing. He did all of the editing and most of the directing, along with this guy
Nice
JD.
job, Justin.
Yeah, no, he was a real workhorse for that. I shudder to think how many hours he spent poring over trying to get these edits together.
Yeah.
And the exciting thing was every episode that came out, the quality improved, not just our acting, I think, but
Nice.
also the cinematography and the style and the jokes. And it was a really amazing experience to be on this show with my friends.
Yeah.
Um, and that was what translated into starting to work in commercials and network television for me, was just
Nice.
finally having good material of myself on camera playing these
Mm.
kind of recognizable characters.
That's awesome. Is it still like on YouTube or anything, or on, I guess, channel?
Yes.
Oh, nice. I have to check that out.
I'm gonna yeah, let me see if I can find us here.
Yeah, because that's definitely something people can watch then. That's cool. While you're doing that, and you also did Mysteries at the Museum, which I did as well. It's one of my, I played a woman who swallowed frogs back in the 16th century, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. So what was your experience? Because I feel like it's something like a lot of actors go through when they first come here, is do some kind of reenactment thing.
Yeah, the reenactment shows are excellent ways to get yourself accustomed to working on a set, working in front of the camera. It's pretty low stakes because oftentimes you
Right.
don't have a ton of dialogue that you've got to memorize.
I
It's
had
just a couple of,
none.
yeah, I had none in Monsters Inside Me, which was my first one of those. And then I had none in Mysteries of the Museum. But my favorite part of that, and I've never been able to find the footage of it, was I also played a body double of Hitler.
Oh, I think
Um,
you told me about this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Continue.
yeah. So like I came in with a pretty scraggly beard to play someone's young son who discovers this magic magnetic ball in one of the scenes. And then they came up to me at the end and they're like, "Hey, we need you for this other thing. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "All right, well, we need you to shave down to like just a really skinny mustache." And I was, "What, like a Hitler stash?" And they said, "Yes, exactly."
Uh
And then before you knew it, we were pulling my hair back into a ponytail right behind my head. I was
wow.
down to the Hitler stash, and they had me in this bombed out garage over in New Jersey,
Wow.
pretending to be a body double of Adolf Hitler.
Interesting. That definitely is a story. Um, And you've also been on some pretty big network TV shows like Blacklist, Blue Bloods, Bull. How was being a co-star on these? Well, obviously it's very different than independent work because it's bigger stakes and everything. Tell me a little bit about a typical day on one of these sets, and did you have to audition via video first, like the whole process?
Yeah, so it's a lot of hurry up and wait when you're on a big set like that.
Yeah, of course.
It's helpful in some ways because you have a lot of time usually with the pages. Usually, as soon as you get to your trailer, the first thing somebody does will
A
bring you the
trailer.
pages for the day.
I'm jealous. A trailer.
I listen, when you're a co-star, it's usually just the honey wagon, so nothing
It's something.
nothing that exciting. It is definitely the first time you see your name on the outside of one of those. It's a very, very cool experience. But like I was working with this guy. My first one was on Blue Bloods. I was playing a Russian gangster named Dmitri.
Russia. Okay.
And yeah, I was the right hand of the guest star, the special guest star for that episode. This guy named Richie, who fantastic actor, but he was like flown out from LA, and like they put him up in a nice hotel. And I remember he needed help filming an audition one day, and so he calls me to come to his trailer. And like his
Very
has
different.
a TV and a microwave and a recliner. For those of you listening, the first time you get in a honey wagon, you'll see what I'm talking about, because it's, you know, it's an upgrade from holding in background, but it, you know, it's not, it's, you don't feel quite like an actor yet. And then I saw Richie's trailer and I was like, oh, this is very fancy. But you know, he was the special guest star for that episode, so that all tracks.
That's pretty
But
cool. He asked you to help him with an audition too. That's
yeah,
cool.
well, I told him and most of the people that I met on set that this was kind of this is my first big network role, and everybody was super excited for me.
Oh,
The director was super helpful, very kind. I remember at one point I just tried something that wasn't in the script,
oh wow.
and he, because we were on a second or third take, we knew we had one in the can. It wasn't a line or anything, but we were basically in the cop's face and like telling him to get out of our neighborhood. And he asked one of the cops to linger a little bit longer and kind of mean mug us. And so I just looked at him and I gave him like a little tss, and you know, nodded my head, told him to go on. And the director
That's
came in
awesome.
first and he goes, "Did you make a noise at him? Do that again. That was cool."
Awesome.
So that, yeah. It's still very much even on those big sets, and even when you're not somebody who is somebody, it can feel like a very collaborative space.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember my last big network co-star before the pandemic was on Bull. Beth Rooney was our director. She
Okay.
was so fantastic. You know, she came up and she looked every single one of us in the eye that were the co-stars that day. She knew all of our names
Nice.
and
That's good.
and she had very specific direction for us and made sure to let us know. It's like, all right, we've got one. We're gonna adjust the frame a little bit, do something different this time, and like was
Oh,
very
nice.
intentional about how collaborative she was being with the process. So even then, they're on the big sets. A lot of times, they it's cool. You feel when you're in the right kind of environment, you still feel like you have some creative freedom to maybe try some things and do some things different.
That's awesome. And as far as you know, any advice for actors trying to get into the room for like auditioning for roles like this? Like what's an audition like for a bigger job like this? And do they give feedback in the room when you come in and audition for these big network shows?
They'll give you feedback if you're completely wrong.
Oh, okay. So no feedback is good. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times, because again, like they trust you when you're at that stage. You usually have had either an agent or a casting director that has seen your work and has vouched for you, and they know that like, all right, they're going to come in, they're going to bring some choices,
Nice.
and we'll go from there. But like I distinctly remember on the episode of Bull, I came into the audition and I had prepped a Southern accent because the jail was getting hit by a hurricane. I was like, I
Oh,
feel like that's got to be somewhere in the South, right?
yeah,
Are we in
yeah, it
Louisiana?
is.
And they go, no, this is Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh, okay, that choice was completely wrong. Got it. Let me just do my normal
You
voice
made
here.
one though, so that's important. It's good to make.
Right. And one of the things that's tricky for TV and film is because it's so different from theater, where you don't need to reach the back row or do anything that is ostentatious, let's say. Having watched a lot of my own tapes and kind of knowing what books and what doesn't, and watching people that I've helped audition, the small obvious choice is almost always the right one, because what it's going to come down to more than anything else is what do you look like?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if I come into an audition and I have dark hair and I have dark long hair, and there's another guy that is a name actor that's also going to be in the scene that has dark long hair, they can like my talent fine. They're going to pass on me for that because
Right.
we look too similar on camera. But
Mm.
a lot of times they don't know that until they actually see your audition tape and they go, oh, he looks just like so and so. We can't use him.
Oh, that makes
So it's tricky to not. It's tricky because you want to do so much. You feel like you want to do something that's going to get you noticed. But a lot of times, just making the safe, easy choice that makes sense for the script is going to be what takes you a long way.
that's
I
cool.
like my first network TV co-star audition that I ever got was for that episode of Blue Bloods, and I came into the room and it was just me and the casting director.
Oh, wow.
And the casting director reads the first line of the script,
Oh.
and I'm like, I have the wrong pages, and they're like, what?
Oh,
And I was like, I don't think I don't think these are the right pages. And she comes over and she looks at me and she goes, oh my God, that's my fault. We're casting two things right now. I sent your agent the wrong sides. Let me print out the right sides. Do you have a minute? I'm going to audition these two other actors and then you come in. So I sat out in the lobby and I was like, great. This is my first time and I completely blew it. And it
well, it's
wasn't
not
even my
your
fault.
fault, obviously.
Right.
So.
And she was so understanding about that. And I just took the time and I just
You
went in there
roll
and said,
with it. She probably was
yeah.
impressed, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So you never know. You never know what's going to be the thing that does it for you in the room. So being true to yourself and
Mhm.
not trying to do too much, especially in the realm of television and film, is going to take you a really long way.
Cool. Less is more. And speaking of theater, you've done a lot of theater as well. You also did Scooby-Doo Live, which you took to Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Like what? How did this come about and what's it like touring internationally? I mean, crazy.
Oh yeah. So that was actually my first professional theater job.
Nice.
Was going to Cairo, Egypt to perform with Scooby-Doo Live. And I still to this day, I had just broken up with my manager at the time.
Mm.
And I got a call from them and I was like, you know what? I don't want to answer this right now. I'm just going to let it go to
The one
voicemail.
you've dumped already, you're talking about.
Yeah. And then the manager called and then I listened to the voicemail and it's like, hey, Ben, you should call me back. They want you to go to Egypt. So I immediately picked up the phone and rang them back. And yeah, it was the audition process happened all in New York. It was for a company that I've now worked for a few times called Event Box Productions that's based out of Lebanon.
Wow.
They're a fantastic company to work for. If you ever see one of their audition breakdowns, don't be afraid to go in and do it. All of my experiences with them have been fantastic.
What was
And
it
yeah,
called again? The box or something?
Event Box.
Event box. Okay.
Event Box. Yeah, and I have since worked for that director on a couple of different projects too, which has been
Nice.
very exciting. Antoinette Di Pietropalo, she likes to keep her people around. She's a fantastic director and an even better choreographer because she's made it look like I can dance a time or two.
Nice. Very cool. So, but what was it like just going to like, what's the process even just of going somewhere like Saudi Arabia or Egypt? It's like, that's.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky there in that the company handled a lot of that for us. We mostly just
Gotcha.
had to, get our passports approved. They had to make sure they weren't going to expire during any point
Gotcha.
when our visas were approved for. And then, yeah, get on a plane at usually like 9 p.m. in New York City, fly overnight, get to the Middle East, and then go to sleep immediately.
Is it like
Uh,
like being in such a different culture? Is it a little bit like scary to like make sure you're doing like the right thing, I guess, or did you not do much in the country? Is mostly
Well,
just
I want to recognize my privilege here as a white American male, in that I don't have a lot of the same concerns that other people might when it comes to traveling
sure.
internationally. I did feel very safe and very comfortable, but we primarily went everywhere and did things as a group.
Right.
At one point, we had a day off, and so we took a trip to the pyramids because how
Oh,
do you go to
cool.
Egypt and not see the pyramids? And so we all made sure to do that together as a group. Anytime we went out for dinner, we tried to make sure that there was at least a small group of us that were there. And a lot of big cities around the world are just like big cities in America. People speak all sorts of languages.
Sure.
And we had a lot of folks with us that spoke English and were able to help us with translations and things like
Nice.
that. A lot of our crew were locals, which was very
Okay.
exciting, working with people that were stagehands and grips and PAs and things like that were members of that culture who were very impressed with us as American
Oh, nice.
actors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was fun to get to know them and get to take some trips with them, taking us out doing dune bashing, which is just driving in a dune bashing. Yeah, it's just getting out in a 4x4 and riding through sand dunes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a popular pastime over there. It's a lot like a roller coaster. It's so much fun.
That's really cool. And you also back here, you did a show for the famous New World Stages. Tell me about getting cast in this and your experience in that production. And I think you were in Bible as a
Yeah, I
part.
was in a show called The Imbible: A Spirited History of Drinking. Very long running show at New World Stages, which I don't think has come back yet, but I suspect it will at some point.
I know I've definitely heard of
It,
it. It's yeah.
yeah, it was one of those rare moments where my day job bled into the chance to perform, because the show is hosted by a bartender, and it takes people through a history of how we first discovered alcohol and put it to its uses, and how it's influenced our culture and history over the course of, from the time that we were cavemen all the way up through now. And it's accompanied by barbershop music, which I'd had experience singing a cappella and in a cappella groups a ton. And I had been working for a bartender, or as a bartender, for about 2 years prior to auditioning for that show. Um, and yeah, it was a ton of fun. I was surrounded by some insanely talented people, most of whom have since gone on to do a lot of really other impressive work. I don't
Nice.
think we have any alumni that are on Broadway yet. We've had quite a few that have gone on to do a lot of work regionally.
Nice.
I know we had someone that was an octet as a swing, covering like 4 different tracks in this insane a cappella musical that was at Theater Row for a long time.
Nice.
So I was very fortunate. I was surrounded by a lot of hardworking, gifted people there, and it was a chance to do some fun science theater and music talk.
Nice. And then one more thing, we you were Angus and Macbeth with Stag and Lion Theater. So this one was new to me. Actually, I did audition for them a little while ago. But what was it like taking on such an iconic play and working with this company?
Yeah, Stag and Lion is one of the smaller theater companies that have been around for a long time doing Shakespeare in New York City. I was exposed to them through my friends Ian Witt and Chelsea Sage, and they just happened to be looking for somebody that could step into a role really quickly, learn a few short lines, and then be another body on stage. But it was so exciting to be part of something that it really felt like all the best parts of community theater, because we were working with tons of professionals that were only there because they love Shakespeare and they love getting the chance to perform it. And this company has been around, I believe, since 1985. Someone's going to get mad at me because I got that year wrong, and it's been longer than that. But they used to perform outdoors at this community garden on the Upper West Side. And so it was a summer only thing. And they found the space in Midtown at the Trinity Theater that they've really turned into a respectable little off-Broadway house. I mean, every time I go back and see a production there are new elements to the stage design that they've incorporated. They've brought new actors into the company, and it's so fascinating to see that people, as they have the opportunity and the time, rotate through and just perform for the love of Shakespeare. It's a really fast-growing, I don't want to say young company, but there are a lot of young new actors that are part of it. So in a lot of ways, it's in a new reincarnation now. And I love going back to watch shows as much as I love being in them with that company.
Nice. Okay, so just real quick before we get into your show, I did want to just mention, because you mentioned that you sing. You have a really nice voice. Listen to some of your singing reels. You worked on a musical in development, which is something actually I got to sort of start to get to do recently. Tell me about that project and how you got involved in that, and then we'll jump over to your show.
Yeah, so that was another connection through the Actors Project NYC.
Oh, nice.
I was very fortunate through them to meet a couple of young composers who were working on a musical at the time, and I was singing one of their pieces as part of the showcase, and they said, "Hey, are you available to come? We're trying to set some orchestrations. Can you come sing some of these songs for the orchestra and everything?"
Wow.
And little did I know, the last person that had recorded some of those songs with them was Jeremy Jordan, of all people,
Whoa.
back before he really blew up.
Wow.
So, you know, I understand the skepticism around pay to play for sure. You definitely want to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of, because everybody in New York City will tell you that, like, oh yeah, if you just spend a little bit more money, you're going to make it. But one of the things that was great about some of these companies is the networking opportunities.
Oh yeah,
And that was a huge one for me. Getting to meet those guys and then go in and actually sit with like a 10-piece orchestra and sing
wow.
for them and do some orchestrations. That wasn't something that I was compensated for, but the exposure to that process and being around it at the time as a young singer and realizing like, oh, I'm in the same room where someone like Jeremy Jordan had been just recently. It was very inspiring. I'm not gonna lie, I was a young guy and it was very exciting at the time, so I definitely was willing to work for free for that.
That's all. I mean, you're still pretty much a young guy, but yes. All right, so let's
I'm
get.
gonna be 33 next year.
I'm not going to mention how old I am in this podcast.
Okay.
Anyway, but you're not. That's not that old. Okay. That's years of experience you have, and you've done quite a
Right.
lot
All
with
right.
it. It's very impressive. Okay, so let's talk about the reason why we're here mostly is to discuss Wild New York, which is such a fun show that you have. What gave you the idea for this show? And you introduce yourself for those, I'll be explaining it before this, of course, but it's a show about like wildlife in New York, and you introduce yourself as an amateur naturalist. Like, what does that mean, and what made you get into this? Tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, so the amateur naturalist is just a catch-all meant to cover up for all of the things that I get wrong and all the things that it turns out I thought was right that were not right, and
Smart.
all the things that I'm going to learn, because
Nice.
I am not a scientist by trade. I'm not even a scientist by happenstance. I love nature. I love animals. I love wildlife. I always have. We mentioned at the top of the podcast, there was a period in my life where I thought that working with animals was going to be what I was going to do.
Right.
And so, like so many people, I found myself broke and unemployed with no prospects at the beginning of 2020. I had been working on the development of the Heroine Diaries, a musical adaptation of the memoirs of Nikki Sixx.
Oh, nice.
I went all the way through the reading of that, and then got the sad call from my management team that Nikki wanted to go in a different direction.
Oh,
And I respected that, because it's his story. He deserves to have a very, very important say in who tells it. But it was heartbreaking.
yeah,
And
that's rough. Yeah.
I had spent about a year prior to that exclusively working in acting. I was doing the show at New World Stages at the time. I had just gotten back from doing another event box show in the Middle East with Meet the Justice League. Right before I left, I had booked Bull and had taken my SAG card. So I felt like I had, I felt like I had all this positive momentum going.
Yeah.
And then I get the bad news that, like, hey, you're not going to be touring with this show. They're going to replace you with another actor. And so I didn't really know what to do. And so I went back to Bubblegum Shrimp Company in Times Square, New York, with my hat in my hand, and said, you know what, I'm going to wait tables until the next thing comes along.
Yeah.
And the next thing that came along was the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, okay.
And so I was sitting at home, thankfully able to collect unemployment.
That helps a lot. I do too.
And as we were transitioning through the end of April and into May, and we were sort of learning how to live with this new normal, I was in one of those very fortunate places where I was essentially being paid to do nothing, which in my mind became, all right, well, I'm now being paid to do the things that I always wanted to do. You know, that question people ask, what would you do if money was no object? Well, I started to learn to play guitar seriously, which has been immensely rewarding. But the main thing that I always wanted to do, and never thought I had the smarts or the skill to try, was to become the next Steve Irwin. I loved him. I loved Jeff Corwin growing up. All of those shows on Animal Planet were such a huge inspiration for me. So I decided to see if there was a way to do that in New York City. And I realized that I was going to need somebody to hold the camera if I was going to be in front of it. So I reached out to my friend Katie, who I had just done the Justice League show with.
Oh, she was
in
the
hey,
okay.
Yeah. She and I had grown fairly close and become professional collaborators through this whole process of Justice League. And I said, hey, I kind of want to do something with animals. And she was like, I love that. I love animals.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, neither of us know anything. So the first thing we got to do is research. So we started going into figuring out what kinds of things live here. And it turns out that New York City is home to more than 600 different species of animals, which I had absolutely no idea. There are coyotes and foxes and humpback whales and great horned owls and bald eagles.
Whales?
Yeah. And all these things that you would never expect would be in the most urbanized place on the planet. I mean, in a lot of ways, New York City is the heart of modern civilization.
Yeah.
And it's still proliferated with all of these amazing wild creatures. So I didn't know anything about how to make a show. I didn't know anything about editing, really, beyond the little bits that I'd done for my self-tape. I knew even less about capturing audio. So we grabbed our cell phones and we bought a gimbal off of Amazon, and we bought a couple of lavalier mics off of Amazon. And we just started going outside and trying to figure it out. Syncing up the audio portion was one of the most challenging aspects. And the other most challenging aspect was trying to figure out what the narrative is going to be for a show like this. If you watch a lot of the different animal documentaries that are available on Netflix and Hulu and things like that right now, they're very heavily narrative driven, where they, in a lot of
Right.
ways, will anthropomorphize these animals. You'll follow a bald eagle nest over the course of hatching the chicks and raising them, and the first time they fly off. But we didn't have time for that.
Right.
So it became about, well, let's introduce people to these animals that live here, teach them some things they might not know about them, and then go out and show them what it's like to see these animals in the wild. So that always became a very important close to the episode of getting me or Katie in frame with the animal that we're talking about and showing that, like, hey, this is not just some imaginary thing.
Right.
This is something that shares your neighborhood.
That's all. So you didn't really have to like raise money then to do it. You just kind of just used your cell phones and got these little things.
Yeah, I have since spent
More
a
money.
number that I do not want to disclose
No, you don't
on
have to. You don't. No.
on investing in new equipment and things like that. But we've now got almost 2,000 followers on Twitter. We've got over 1,100 followers on Instagram. We've got over 300 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Our most popular video just went over 3,000 views the other day, which, it's not enough to be making any money off of it yet, but it is at the very least showing me that we're creating something that people are interested in and learning more about. And so the next steps for me have always been about, well, now how do I get the quality to where I want it? I probably spent a month editing the squirrels episode, which was our pilot.
It's awesome.
And I realized that, like, eventually I just have to put it out there. It's never going to look exactly like I want it to. I just need to put it out there and
That was good.
and see what happens. It's fun. It's very Saturday morning PBS, which is the main feedback that I've gotten from people, which is kind of the style that we were going for. So in a lot of ways, I think we
Yes,
were
is
very
awesome.
successful
Like
in
a
that.
staple. Like I think that's a compliment personally.
And I've pitched the show to Animal Planet once on one of their
Really?
just on one of their websites where they were soliciting new content. But there's been a lot that's going on with the merger between Time Warner and Discovery, and we're transitioning out of that period now where everyone is going content crazy and just buying stuff left and right. So it's a little bit harder to get people to want to invest in a new idea now. So my hope is to continue developing the quality of the programming. I have a camera now that can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, which seems to be the way that most wildlife documentaries are going now. You need to be able to slow the animals down a little bit so that people can actually appreciate what it is that they're seeing and process them a little bit quickly. That's the other thing that being a lover of Animal Planet lied to me about. Animals are fast and they don't like being on camera.
Have to wait. They are fast, I guess. I'm always thinking of having to sit and wait, like you're probably talking about.
There is a lot of that to a certain degree, but even more so, it's like, well, then when the animal shows up, it's like, boom, it's there and it's gone. Well, how am I going to spin that into any kind of like real content? There's two rules in film and television: never work with children or animals, because neither of them will ever be on your schedule. So
I thought that was because they steal the spotlight. That's what I thought was the main reason. That also they do.
No, you want them to steal the spotlight, but when you're on a film and television set, the number one resource is always time. Everything takes so much time, and everybody needs to be in such sync to get the shot and make sure that you're staying on schedule. And boy, do animals not care about that.
Well, yeah, no, they're not getting paid. They don't care.
I have spent more time than I care to admit, like out in the woods around New York City, just doing absolutely nothing and twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the animal to show up. Then, yeah. But I love it. I love the outdoors. I have loved exploring. I've been to every park in New York City now. I'm pretty confident that I can say that.
And how many parks are there?
There's over 12,000 green spaces. How many actual individual parks there are, I don't know specifically.
12,000. 12,000, really?
Yeah, 12,000 green spaces. But a lot of that will include like J. Hood Wright. That's the park that's right across the street from where I live in Washington Heights. It's a small little 5-acre estate. Gotcha. The wildest thing we get there is a raccoon and occasionally like a red-tailed hawk.
Okay. You're talking about all the birds, right?
I've walked 12 miles to the Staten Island Greenbelt. I currently work in Pelham Bay Park. I spent last summer in Van Cortlandt. I spent a ton of time in Prospect Park.
Because you work for the parks. What is the job that you do now? Because you got a job.
Now I am an urban park ranger. Nice. I get the badge and everything. It's definitely the most fulfilling day job that I think I've ever had. It's given me continuing opportunities to teach and develop my skills of like live presentation, because we do a lot of public programming, not just for kids, for the general population as well. So it's a job that I hope I'm going to do for a long time.
And it is basically, so this basically did lead to you getting money because it led to you to this job, probably helped you get this job, I would assume.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I
I
don't know.
actually was able to meet a couple of urban park rangers over social media,
Nice.
and I talked to them for a long time about like what I was doing, and they really enjoyed a lot of my photographs. And then this job opportunity came to work for them as essentially a junior ranger last summer. And I said, hey, I really want to do this. And they're like, great, we think you'd be good at it. And so that was what I spent last summer doing.
Nice.
They were super flexible and understanding. I had to take 2 days off to go and shoot the television show that you and I cannot disclose yet because we're still under
Oh,
NDA.
okay.
But
Yeah.
that was our most recent project where we were on set together.
That was really fun. It's fun
And
getting to watch your friend do their thing, so that was fun.
yeah. Um, and so my hope is that it will continue to have that level of flexibility. I'm transitioning away from doing so much live theater now. I want to be doing a little bit more film and television. That is the work I think I've come to enjoy the most.
Interesting. And so how do you choose each subject for your animal show? Just whatever animal you feel like talking, or is there a certain way you choose each
Yeah,
show
there were
episode special?
well, like I said, there's more than 600, so you have a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity. And in that first season, we tried to do a combination of showcasing things people know about and expect, and things that people might not expect. Our first season was very mammal heavy, so we thought, well, people are used to seeing squirrels in New York City, but how much do they really know about them? And that would have been a chance for us to actually go through and talk about the history of squirrels and their relationship to New York City, the different kinds of squirrels that live here. Raccoons are another animal that if you ask someone on the street to name a wild mammal they might expect to see in New York City, they would say raccoon.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity there to still kind of teach them some new things. And then we wanted to look at some other animals that people might not realize lived here, like the red-tailed fox.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the humpback whale. That was one of the most
That's crazy.
shocking things that we got to do.
That's cool. And you also filmed in like South Florida as well, which is surprising since it's wild New York. What made had you just been going there, or you just decided you wanted a different location? And what was
Oh yeah. So I have tried, now that I have this show that is something that I want to do all the time, that when I'm out on contract, to continue taking advantage of being in a new space and explore the wildlife that's there. And there's so much cool wildlife in Florida. I was down in Miami doing a live version of the Polar Express with the Miami Brightline. And I was going to be down there for a month and a half, and I knew that I was going to have some built-in days off. And the Everglades were just a short half-hour drive away.
Oh yeah, and that's a lot of wildlife.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, do you ever had any issues with like people keeping them when you're filming? Because it's mostly just you and the animals, like keeping people out of frame, or they're pretty good about not like walking in.
Yeah, for the most part, where I'm at are remote enough locations that I don't generally have to deal with people being in and around it. We tend to find places that are a little bit more isolated too, because that helps with the audio. If you don't have a ton of noise in the background, it's going to help get your audio capture a little bit cleaner.
And also, do you have like you've got to have some amusing like mishap stories or weird animal stories? Give me one.
Oh, all right. The weirdest animal story
Or
is
funny or whatever. I don't know.
whale breath smells horrible. And so we were trying to set up
Interesting.
this shot. Yeah, we were trying. Well, you think about it. What are they eating for the most part? They're eating like plankton and these fish and everything, and they're eating it raw, straight out of the ocean water in the New York Bight. Their breath's not going to smell great. And so we were trying to set up a shot where the whale was going to emerge behind me, and you see the blowhole, and we're turning around and talking about them. And the smell just hit right in the middle of the take. And
Oh
I
shit.
almost I almost gagged. And it's like, all right, we can't use that.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah, and there were a couple of moments too in our season 1 intros. You'll see we have a funny little video of Katie tripping as she's walking down some rock. We were trying to get like an epic mountain climber video, and she slipped and fell and caught herself. And she started
Oh,
laughing, and I thought it looked cute, so it made the intro. But that was one of those where like it could have been an outtake easily. We did do an entire episode just dedicated to bloopers.
oh
It's more
yeah. I think I
difficult
saw
than you would think. Yeah, it's more difficult than you would think, getting out there and then trying to get all of these lines out in a way that's clear and cogent and interesting. So there'll be a lot of times where you get halfway through a line as you're talking to the camera and you just completely forget what you're saying, and you got to go back to one.
Yeah. And a lot of your episodes also include Ben music. So do you like compose for the show?
No, actually, this is a website called bensound.com. They have a lot of license-free music that's available for the
Okay.
background of YouTube videos and stuff like that. Yeah, the name Ben is just a coincidence. I have composed
Ah,
none
okay.
of
Because
that
I was
music.
like, Ben, it's his music. He just calls it Ben music.
Yeah, no, I wish. The irony is not lost on me, but I did reach out to them and let them know how amazing I think all of their stuff is, which they were very appreciative of, and the fact that we linked to their catalog and all of their episodes. They do have some music that's available for purchase, but I love all of their tracks that are just freely available. They
So
seem to
it's like
vibe really well with the
it's the
nature
royalty
stuff.
free, like older sort of just
Yes.
that's awesome. That's good to know. And do you have a favorite episode by chance, or you just love
Ooh,
all?
one of my favorite episodes for sure is the red-tailed hawk episode, just because it's my favorite animal. And that was one of the first ones we shot primarily on a DSLR camera. So we had really upgraded our videography for that one. Um, and so like some of the animal footage in there, I think is really top notch. I had a lot of fun making it. It was one of our first big Predator episodes.
Nice.
The one that I'm most proud of is probably the American alligator episode. I
Hmm.
feel like the script for that one is really good. I had one of my good friends come in who has a fantastic deep bass voice come in and do our nature narration. Um, and I'm very proud of that episode. I think that one showcases the best of like what I would like to do with the show overall. And then again, the whales one, I'm just amazed that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
I had just seen an article in Gothamist about how there was this humpback whale that made its way up the Hudson River, and someone saw it from the George Washington Bridge. And
Wow.
when we were first pitching these episodes to each other about the animals we wanted to do, I had said to Katie, oh, it would be so cool to do a whales episode. Like, can
Yeah.
you imagine if that's something that we would be able to do? And so when we were able to connect with Gotham Whale and get out there on a whale watching tour with them and film an episode, it really felt like the culmination of taking this project from something that was just a dream that we had on a whim to like, wow, we did something really cool and really special.
Yeah, you did. And when do you know when we're gonna get more content for the show?
I
Let me.
actually haven't. I actually have an episode that's going to come out tomorrow for Wildlife Wednesday. It's a short wildlife only video. I'm working and learning my way around this new camera that can shoot this incredibly crisp slow motion footage. So it's a collection of various animals around Central Park from earlier this week. That is a chance to look at them in slow motion and really appreciate the majesty of their movements. I'm a big believer in that if you can look at something that you see every day in an unusual way, it can become extraordinary. And so
That's
that's where I would like to take the show next, is being able to really slow some things down and showcase the beauty of this wildlife that lives all around us.
awesome. And what do you want viewers to get out of this series? Is there
If they
anything you
can,
want to get out of it?
yeah, if they can come away from the series appreciating how resilient nature is, I think that's going to go a long way in towards impacting the way that we behave. Because a lot of people think about New York as the concrete jungle only. Concrete, steel, glass, they think of it as this very, very human centric place. And I think that goes for the majority of New Yorkers and for the majority of people around the world. And even with such little effort that we've given to maintaining our natural spaces, there are still these incredible creatures that don't just live here, they thrive here.
Yeah.
And so if I can raise people's level of awareness about all the things that are right here around them, and that makes them want to take better care of their parks and take better care of their neighborhoods, and advocate for the city giving a bigger budget to the parks department
Yeah.
to help maintain these spaces and these creatures, that's a huge thing, not just for me as a wildlife lover, but that could be huge for the planet. In a
Absolutely.
lot of ways, New York City is leading the way in how urban environments think about not just their wildlife, but their natural areas. I mean, there's a whole huge restoration project going on with our wetlands right now because they realize that that's the best way to defend against the next superstorm that's going to come through,
Hmm.
is having these wetlands that can help absorb storm surge and stop it before it gets to the city. Um, and that has so many other benefits beyond just helping save New York from a 10-foot storm surge. That's going to increase the wildlife that are around us and bring us a little bit better back into balance with nature.
Awesome. And as we're wrapping up here, because I know you're a very busy man, I do usually like to ask my guests, I almost forgot to ask you, if there was a time where you thought about like leaving the craft or like giving up acting and like what brought you back. Maybe it was sort of like what happened during COVID, sort of, or if there was any other point where you're really frustrated, just to inspire others to keep going.
Oh, the reality is, I think about leaving the craft every day. There's not a day that gets up that I don't get up and think, you know, I don't have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
It's a hard life, and if your listeners take a look at my resume, they might think that like, oh, this is a guy that's really he's had so much success. Things must be
That's
so
how I
easy.
see you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that it takes a lot to sit back and be thankful for all the things that I've gotten to experience. But the hunger, when you love performing and when you love reaching people, the hunger to do more and to do better never goes away. And so being able to keep that in balance with an appreciation for what you've already been able to do is huge. And it's part of why I haven't quit yet. I'm able to look at the opportunities that I've had and the things that I've experienced and say, you know, I didn't think it would turn out this way, and that's okay. And there are things that I wish had gone differently and had gone better, but you're always going to feel that way. I like to tell people the Henry Cavill story, that he was Hollywood's next man up for almost 2 years, where he was being considered for all of these top roles. It was down to him and another guy, and every studio executive knew that like, oh, Henry Cavill's going to be a star. He's a fantastically good-looking guy. He's so hardworking. He's so genuine. Something right is going to come along for him. And what is it? He's the next Superman, but everybody hates that franchise. So you can be at the top of your game. You can achieve all of your dreams. You can have the recognition and success from your peers in the industry that you've always craved. And art is still so collaborative that it can still not work out. So you have to be satisfied with what you're doing and balance that with your hunger to be doing more. And a lot of that is doing what you're doing, having a podcast where you have some creative control, doing what I'm doing, creating a YouTube series where I have all of the creative control and I can exercise all of the lessons that I need to learn about how to become a better artist and become a better performer in an environment where I really have control. That has been a big part of keeping me invested in my growth as a performer.
Absolutely, because we don't get a little control to a lot of things.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, Ben, can you tell us like how people can, you mentioned you're on Twitter and Instagram and all that, how people can keep track of your work and the show and everything, just so they know where to look for you?
Yeah, I've tried to brand myself as best I can. So my website is www.by3art.com. And if you're on any social media, you can just look for @by3, the letters BY, the number 3, and the letters ART. On all the social media, you should be able to find my stuff. Wild New York has not been as successful. We're almost on everything as Wild New York Show, but we did get the YouTube channel. We are youtube.com/c/Wild New York, which is awesome. And we are the only Wild New York on TikTok. So no show there. We are just
TikTok,
Wild New York.
okay.
The TikToks are not great. I'm still figuring out that medium with the wildlife footage. My hope is that now that I've got some more of the slow down stuff, I'll be able to do some stuff that people relate to a little bit more on the old TikTok. I'm a little bit of an old crotchety old man when it comes to that.
And what is
on Twitter,
really
Facebook,
quickly,
and Instagram @Wild New York Show.
BY3 thing mean? Also, I meant to ask you that.
Oh, I am Ben Young the Third.
Oh, okay.
So,
oh, duh. Okay, yeah. Okay. That's why I didn't put that together.
ART.
That's great. And the art.
That's
yeah.
right. It's funny. I have so many people that tell me they love how easy it is to find me, and then I was in a class with an agent who was like, "By3 Art, this is terrible. You need to change this." that was one of my first times just looking at an industry professional, fellow industry professional, and saying, "No, you're wrong."
They sometimes are.
So, yeah. That's going to be the other. That's if I can leave all of your listeners with one thing, it's that keep staying true to yourself. It's way more fun than trying to figure out what everybody else wants.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ben. It's been great having you on. Take care.
Yeah, Joanna, I can't wait to see you on set again.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey again, it's your host of Johanna's Artbeat, Johanna'a. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and thank you, Ben, for tuning in, for joining me on this podcast episode today. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. So, as I said earlier, the podcast is going to be taking a bit of a hiatus, just because I want to work on some writing of my own and some other projects. But I really, really appreciate each and every one of you who have listened and have tuned in on the video as well. It's meant a lot, and I've really enjoyed getting to know people. Actually through interviewing them, even people who are close friends who I didn't know, there are facts I didn't know about them. So I've really had a lot of fun doing this. And it's not over yet, but at least for now, we're taking quite a big pause. So thank you for watching the very first season. You can still follow what I'm up to, johannagrisay.com. I'm on all pretty much the major social medias, although not on Twitter as much lately, but Johanna R. Grisay on Instagram, still Johanna Grisay on Twitter. When I am on and on TikTok, it's official Johanna Grisay, and then Facebook as the artist Johanna Grisay. So check out my information if you'd like to follow on with what I'm doing, because I'm still pretty busy in the arts. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, and thank you so much again. Take care.